Today, Windrose released their first patch after their early access release that addresses a number of critical issues that we are going to go through right now. This is version 0.10.0.4. A lot of other numbers. You can read it there on the screen, but there are a few key things we want to talk about in this patch for sure. So first up, they made some changes to how you connect to other players who may not be playing on a dedicated server with you. There's apparently a problem with some ISPs or other systems blocking the connections between players. So they've set up a relay server so you can connect to your friends even if you don't have a dedicated server, but this will come with the additional ping because the relay server acts as a proxy server as opposed to directly connecting to your friends. So if you're having issues with connecting to friends to play the game, this might be your way forward for now. The second big change is they made some changes to the CPU usage when you're idle on dedicated servers and clients. I have not seen this personally, but just last night, someone in my stream mentioned that they were having this problem with their friends where their server, when idle, was at 30% CPU and nobody was on the server. When people would log in, it would go down to 10%. So this is a nice change for people that leave servers running constantly. The third change is a big one, and this is one that kind of kicked off a lot of my coverage of this game, was around the disk usage during gameplay. This is specific to the SSD issue where there was a significant amount of writing happening during the actual game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the game here and we're going to test what the current version looks like in regards to disk usage, and hopefully we can see some improvements. So here I am on my boat. Real quick before I do this, some people ask, how do I get on the ropes? And you simply walk up to the ropes and you can find a small, tiny little spot somewhere where you can press E right here. I can't do it here, can't do it here, can't do it here. You got to come right to the edge here and kind of look at this part of the rope and press E, and you'll climb out on the outside of the boat, and you can like use that for some cool pictures, or if you're on somebody else's boat, you can use that to ride outside the boat. And to get off, you press E again. Okay, back to the main point. I wanted to come and test out how the task manager numbers look. I'm gonna start in the same place I started my other video, so there's no confusion about what might be in the frame, what might need to be rendered. So I believe I started right about here. So let's bring up Task Manager. And the number we're going to be looking at here is that write speed number. In the bottom left corner, there's a read speed and a write speed. The only one we're really worried about is write speed. Read speed doesn't really matter. It's not going to have any impact on, if you have concerns about your drive, it's not going to have an impact. Write speed is what matters. So before, when you were sitting still in your base, your write speed would be 0. You'd be doing nothing, which was great. But the second you started moving, everything started to go up really high with the write speed data. So before I got it to about 30 or more megabytes per second of write where you run around your base. So let's see if I can do that again in this patch. So it's less than a megabyte, less than a megabyte. Oh, there's 4.6. Okay. 4.1 kilobytes. I'm going to run down to my small base over here, which is the same path I took when I did my first video. It's literally writing nothing for a good amount of time and then writes, it looks like it writes in batches. So far, it looks like the largest I've gotten is around 4 megabytes per second, but it's not sustained at all. And that's exactly what you want to see. If the database is writing everything, every step or every move or every frame, that's a problem. If it's batching once every second, that's a major improvement. Absolutely great improvement here so far. So the other test real quick is going to be riding in the boat. In my previous video, riding in your boat caused not only like pretty high shark's tooth of 15 to 30 megabytes per second, but it was a constant 30 megabytes per second for me. So let's go ahead and sail around and see what we can have happen here. This looks much better already. Before, when I started the sailing, I would just get peaked and never come back down. It looks like it's going up to almost maybe 10 megabytes per second, but it's not sustained. Between 4 and 6 now, and then back down to 0, back up to 2, back down to 0. So yeah, this is a huge improvement on sailing as well. It's higher than when you're running around your base, but I think this is still a major improvement. Previous one, I would say it would be about 30 to 50 megabytes per second, just constantly. And I haven't even been able to get it to go over like 15 for any extended period of time at all. Like I think that was the highest I just saw was 13 megabytes per second. There we go. There was 16, but it was just for a blip. It wasn't sustained at all. So I would say this is probably a good 60 to 75% improvement on just the sustained writes. And it also looks like there's a bit of batching going on with the actual writes to the database. So that's really cool. That's great. They did a good job on that. So let's go back to my base real quick and get off the boat. And we'll bring back up the patch notes and go through the rest real quick. So they also reduced the crafting cost of a lot of building pieces. I haven't gone through and done the math on this, but that's a great improvement. Building in this game is really fun, and the only thing I don't like about it is some of the amount of farming you have to do to get the materials. So this will be a nice change. So they added a bunch of new things as well. A lot of triangle pieces were added for roofs, and a few other things were added. So if we go back into the game real quick, we'll be able to see that in my construction area, I haven't looked at any of this stuff to make it go away. So anything with a yellow dot on it is new that they've added. So I'm going to go through them real quick and unmark them. So the triangle floor for marble, and triangle floor for mahogany. That's 3 new items. And then a bunch of 45-degree walls for stone and for logs and for mahogany and for limestone. And then a bunch of 26-degree walls, same deal. And then 64-degree walls. And then finally 13-degree walls. I think the 13-degree walls are brand new because I didn't have any of these unlocked before, I don't think. Maybe I had these. But yeah, these are all new as well. If we go into roofs, I think there's only one. Yeah, there's this one right here, which I don't know when I would use that one, but if you're building a massive base, there's going to be a corner probably that you can use this. So we look at beams. I don't think there's any new beams. Nope. I don't think there's any new windows and doors either. Nope. I don't know if there's any new stairs. Nope. New decorations. I don't think there's new decorations. Nope. There is new farming. So these 2 new farming seed beds. These look actually pretty cool. So the thing I didn't like about the other seed beds was that it didn't really fit in. If you wanted to build like a cool little seed bed here and put something there that you thought would look good for your base, like put like leeks here or something like that, and they'll grow and they'll have a nice little purple flower there. The previous farming, which was this, just looked gross. So they've given you smaller versions of it, but it's still visually, it doesn't match. This stone container for the farming matches much better. So that's a cool change. All right, let's get rid of all this. All right, what is the last thing that might be in? There's nothing. So that's it. So that is all the new things that I have access to. I think I've got everything unlocked. I've bought all the books from all of the vendors, and I've found all the things I think I can find. So I believe that's all of them. So those are good changes as well. So if we go back to the release notes, I've highlighted a few other things. So in the interface, they fixed a frame gen stuttering issue when you would open and close the map or the inventory. I noticed this a lot, and I think I know the reason why this was happening. If you had the HUD turned off and you opened up your inventory or the map, you would get a black screen when you were trying to render the map. And I think it's because they stopped rendering the game in full resolution and or full fidelity when you were showing a full screen UI above it. I think that loading and unloading of the world behind the UI was causing the stutter. So I wonder if they might have just made that change to where it doesn't de-render the background world while you're in that UI. Another good change that I was actually impacted by was the disassembly station, and it would always show you all the items that you had in your bag and on your hotbar and what you had equipped. That was a pain in the ass because you didn't necessarily know what was the best thing to actually deassemble. Now they're going to remove the items that you have equipped, so you can't disassemble the things you're wearing. So that's really good. Another thing that I actually had a workaround for that I won't have to use anymore is that the fast travel markers will now appear on the top layer of the map. That's really great because before I had to kind of like put markers near the fast travel markers that would indicate what that fast travel was for, whether it was for a base that I built or whether it was for one of the faction bases. Now they'll always surface to the top, making it a lot easier for me to find them in the mess of all the other icons I have. And they also made a change to how the hide UI toggle works. So before, if you had the HUD turned off, you got no HUD of any type for anything at all. You couldn't look at your inventory. You couldn't see any menus. You couldn't see aggro statuses when you actually pulled aggro from mobs around you. So they've made it to where you can at least go in your inventory and your journal and other menus, even though you're hiding the HUD. I don't think that's going to fix the issue of not knowing when you have aggro, so you're going to have to pay attention to that. As far as building changes, one of the things that I was bugged by was the fact that the decorative canopies didn't count as a roof for crafting stations. They fixed that. That's great. They made a whole bunch of other fixes around how things were clipping into each other or clipping through each other and calculating the destructible objects. When you pull something out from underneath one object and it was the only supporting structure, sometimes you wouldn't get that notification that it was going to pull all the items and you would destroy something you didn't necessarily mean to destroy. So they're fixing that. That's great. And then a few other things just around random improvements. They upped the Tainted Bile drop rate. Thank God. I was so tired of farming plague crocs. They increased the hardwood drop rate by 20%. Again, farming hardwood is probably not my favorite part of the game. This one here, they fixed the Boar's second strike combo animation. It now has a clearer telegraph, but a longer reach, so be careful. So this got me last night in my stream, where the Boars, when they do that second attack, sometimes it was like not even clear that they were going to do anything at all, and then you'd be dead. So this is a nice change. I don't necessarily like the longer reach, but I get it. That's fine. They also made a change to how the bleed effects work when you're getting attacked by a monster that's going to give you a bleed. Specifically, the wolves do this when they pounce on you. Before, when they would pounce on you, right when they landed on you, you would start the bleed effect. So you'd actually be bleeding out while you were locked into an animation as they thrashed around with you in their mouth. So this fixes that to where you only start bleeding once you actually are released by the alpha wolf. So that's great. They also made some changes to the ore respawn. There were some bugs that I actually hit a few times where I'd come back after like 12 hours into a cave and the ore hadn't respawned. So it's nice that they fixed that. And then finally in this section, the voice lines that your crew do when you're sailing, you really couldn't hear them well or at all if you're in the far camera, the F camera. They made it to where you can hear that, so that'll be cool for immersion. And then finally, in some visual improvements, there's two specific ones that if you're building a base are going to impact you. One is that when you plant trees, it no longer removes a large amount of grass near that tree. That's going to be cool if you want a natural look. So keep that in mind. If you need to remove the grass, you're going to have to dig or flatten to do that. And the other removal of grass under the piers and wharves will no longer be removed. So you'll have a little bit more natural look under those items as well. But overall, that is the patch. This is their very first major patch. They did a really quick hot fix after the release of early access that had just a few small fixes in it. So this is their largest patch to date. I'm really pleased with what they did with the disk usage stuff and the CPU usage stuff. They responded really quickly to the community's concerns, regardless of whether or not you thought it was going to break your hardware. The fact that they recognized the optimization opportunity they had for how they save games and responded to it is great. So kudos to the team for a great first major patch. And I'm looking forward to playing more of this game. I'm about 85 hours in. I've started a third playthrough now on my dedicated server that I set up yesterday. So I've got my main playthrough, which is this one, which I've beat tier 3 already. I've got my hard mode playthrough that I'm streaming, and then my normal playthrough with a dedicated server. I may open to the public at some point, but we'll have to see how we can manage that. But anyway, that's all for today. Thanks for watching.